What I really want to tell you, this story is not really a religious story. It's a story about one human who was a rebel, who had some visions that the society where he lived was not right, that something was really off. And in spite of the system he lived in, he actually decided to change it. Hello humans of the world, this is Marina with Startup Human channel, and today I'm in Assisi, in Italy. I wanted to change the format of my videos. This particular town is famous for St. Francis, and his life story I think is one of the greatest personal development stories. So I will tell you more about that. I have been to Assisi before and I really love the town and again the story of St. Francis, and I decided to come show you where he was born and where he lived. This town is very famous in Italy and he became the patron saint of the whole country. I want you to imagine that you are a pilgrim going through this town, right, and experiencing the life in this town and actually feeling it. So let's go and walk the path. So right now we're at the piazza of the Basilica of Santa Clara, who was the follower of St. Francis. We will have to go through several gates. So Assisi is about 2 hours by train from Rome. Now it's more expanded and it's a bigger town. You can see how beautiful the path is. As a pilgrim, you would usually come to town and you would need to stay somewhere, and also you need to rest, you need to eat. And first thing you would do, you would actually wash yourself. So the town has a lot of fountains and basically wash tubs where you make yourself look clean. St. Francis was born as Giovanni in the family of a wealthy merchant. He was really well off. His father was selling silk and was traveling a lot. Giovanni was called actually Francesco by his father, and he really enjoyed his wealthy lifestyle. So in the early years of his life, he was spending a lot of money, drinking, spending good time with his friends. He was helping his father to actually sell silk as a merchant, and he was making some money. But already early accounts say that he started to have some doubts because he was probably indulging himself too much, and at some point you start getting some questions, right? Is my life the way it should be? There was the first story of the encounter with the beggar when he was selling silk, and the beggar asked him for some kind of donation, and St. Francis actually gave him his money, and the father was not happy, but then he continued living his life the way he was. The path is not always straight, right? That people maybe change overnight, but no. After we have some doubts, we may try something and then go back, and there is a period of adjustment, right, in different experiences. So this is what happened also to St. Francis. So another interesting example of this kind of internal struggle was that he actually was participating in a battle against the nearing Perugia. He was taken captive. He had to reevaluate his life while he was in captivity. Later, he also did the pilgrimage to Rome. He was probably seeing more of poverty and struggle, and it came to a moment that his father was not approving of his decisions, and they had a very contentious relationship. So what is really fascinating about his life story, that in spite of what his father wanted for him, he obviously wanted him to be a successful merchant and to continue their family business. St. Francis had a different idea. He even had some vision of God saying that my church needs to be repaired the way it is right now. Please help me to restore it. So St. Francis took his vision literally because he thought that God wanted him to restore churches that are in disrepair. And he basically went to get money to restore the churches in San Damiano, around Assisi. He tried to use his father's money to do that. And again, the father was not really happy. So now we're standing actually in front of the house where he lived. He was born and raised up until 24 years old. Actually, on the other side is the church. So we're gonna see it right now. St. Francis was giving away all his money and his father's money, and the father was so mad at him that he told him, "You have to forgo your inheritance and live in poverty." St. Francis didn't mind, and that's what he did. Now we see the church, which is the new church, and he told him that he only has one true father, God, and he doesn't need money. Basically, from that day on, he lived in poverty and was living a life just like Jesus Christ lived. This church has a square, and you see a statue in front of the church. This is the statue dedicated to his parents. And in spite of what St. Francis' parents, especially father, thought for him, he lived a different life. Our father was trying to change him. He was beating him up. He was really humiliating him. He was trying to stop him from living this crazy life. So he was actually locking St. Francis in the house for some periods of time, trying to make sure he changes his mind and lives normal life. But again, normal was not the life for St. Francis. He renounced his own father, and he supposedly stripped himself naked to show that he does not need these, material things. But from that moment forward, he was actually wearing a very simple, coarse tunic, brown, as we know him from many different images. Peasants from Umbrian peasants who were really poor were wearing. That's what he was wearing. And he advocated living in peace, in poverty. He was living in a little hut, again, around this area and nearby villages. He was helping the lepers, and he was walking around the hills of the towns nearby, or villages nearby, advocating this simple lifestyle, and again preaching. And it was really strange because he did not have a license, right? He was not really an official priest. People were surprised, but at the same time very inspired by him, because he basically preached something completely different from the opulence of the church. People were actually following him. They were listening to him, and they were really interested in what he was saying, even though it was very, very unusual. What I really want to tell you, this story is not really a religious story. It's a story about one human who was a rebel, who had some visions that the society where he lived was not right, that something was really off. And in spite of this system he lived in, he actually decided to change it. And he had no material possessions. All he had is his willpower, his vision for the world, helping other people who were worse off, who were not as wealthy and rich and handsome and smart as he was. That kind of passion is contagious. Within a year, he had 11 students who followed him. He went to Rome to speak to Pope. Eventually, when he had more pupils, he started a new order that we know now as the St. Franciscan order. He started several other orders. One of them is actually for women, which is called St. Clara or Tiara. Actually, as I mentioned, she heard him speak, and she basically didn't want to marry anyone like her parents wanted for her. And she followed him and created a rule for her order, and was also canonized. He traveled a lot, expanding his order internationally. He had many setbacks. He got sick, he was diverted. Interesting legends about his life, that he was even in Egypt. When St. Francis talked to Pope to allow his order, some Pope's counselors didn't want this order to be allowed because the way of living that St. Francis was preaching was not traditional and supposedly not safe, to live in poverty and kind of being wandering in the country, preaching to people in a very informal way. But supposedly Pope had a vision himself and still allowed the order. Now we know how much influence St. Francis made on the world and other branches of the church and other orders. And today there are a lot of pilgrims and student groups all year round in Assisi. We're still walking the path. We can definitely say that St. Francis found his calling, but if he followed his father's steps, would he find his calling? Would you give up everything that St. Francis had and follow the same path of living in poverty? It is important to find our calling in life, and it does not have to be religious. It's finding a cause and how we can make a difference. How can we improve our life and the life of people around us? How can we make impact on this world? And St. Francis, at the age of 45 years old, he died shortly after. He was actually canonized. The Basilica was built. Now this city is really, really famous. There are 9 churches that have a mass every day, and you can really feel the spirit of St. Francis in every building around it. With a lot of conviction in many of his decisions, and that's why he was able to influence so many people in his real life and after death. And I want to finish our journey with one thing, because some of you may be asking, oh, but not everyone is like St. Francis. We are confined by our society and strict rules that we have to follow. And nowadays it's harder to break through those norms. But I want to quote St. Francis, because he was the one who actually said the following. Saying is, start doing what is necessary, then what is possible, and very soon you will find yourself doing the impossible. And it applies to all of us. We can definitely follow it. Here is St. Francis. I hope you enjoyed the journey. We ended at the Basilica of St. Francis, which is quite opulent in spite of what he was preaching, but we like the message, right? And I hope to show you some other examples of really interesting lives as well. So see you soon.